Apple WWDC 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most talked about Apple events in years, and not just because of the usual iOS update hype. Even though Apple isn't the world's most valuable company right now, it's still the most watched, the most analyzed, and definitely the most leaked. Every year, supply chain reports and insider rumors try to spoil the keynote months in advance. But this time, even with the leaks, there's still real mystery hanging over the WWDC 2026 keynote. Because WWDC 2026 isn't only about software. It feels like a crossroads moment for Apple's future. AI, iPhone hardware, the next generation of Siri, and possibly even a leadership handoff that could redefine how Apple presents itself to the world. The keynote kicks off at 10 a.m. PT on Monday, June 8, 2026, and the stakes feel unusually high. We're expecting big updates like iOS 27, a major Siri overhaul powered by next-gen AI, and maybe even hints about Apple's first foldable iPhone, whether it ends up being called the iPhone Fold or the iPhone Ultra. But the biggest question hovering over everything is this. Does Tim Cook use this WWDC to set up the next era of Apple? And does John Ternus step further into the spotlight? Let's start with the part nobody can ignore. Tim Cook has been the face of modern Apple for years, guiding the company through massive growth, huge product cycles, and the shift towards services. Now, rumors suggest WWDC 2026 could be his final keynote season as CEO. If that's true, Apple won't treat this like a regular developer conference. Apple will treat it like a statement. That brings us to John Ternus, Apple's hardware chief and the name most frequently mentioned as the CEO in waiting, the YAS. Keynote could reveal a lot simply by showing how Apple stages its leadership. Does Cook bring Ternus into major segments side by side, giving him more screen time, more authority, and more lead presenter moments? Or does Apple keep Ternus in a smaller role, letting Cook control the narrative one more time? In Apple world, stage time is strategy. Who introduces what matters? Who closes matters? Who gets the biggest applause line matters? And if Apple is planning to tease a brand new iPhone category like a foldable, then the leadership optics become even more intense. Because whoever is on stage when Apple reveals the next iPhone era becomes tied to it permanently. Which leads to the first massive product question. Will we see the iPhone Fold at all? The foldable iPhone has been rumored for what feels like forever, and the latest whispers suggest Apple's launch timeline may have slipped. Some reports point to a holiday season release window instead of earlier expectations, while other analysts warn that component constraints, especially memory supply, could limit availability and push full demand fulfillment toward 2027. In other words, even if Apple is ready, scaling production might be the real bottleneck. But here's what makes WWDC 2026 so interesting. Apple doesn't always need a product to be ready to use it as a moment. If prototypes exist and multiple leaks suggest they do, Apple could choose to do something bold, an early preview, a controlled sneak peek, a name reveal, a single shot that ends the Fold versus Ultra debate and sets the story before competitors and leakers define it for them. Apple has done this kind of long lead storytelling before. The original iPhone reveal under Steve Jobs in January 2007 was essentially a preview of the future, months ahead of the official launch. That strategy created anticipation, dominated the conversation, and positioned Apple as the company defining the category, even before the product hit shelves. That exact approach would make sense today, because Apple is late to the foldable smartphone game. Samsung, Google, and others have been iterating for years. So Apple's best move isn't to show up with a Me Too foldable. Apple's best move is to leapfrog. Bigger screen, tighter hinge engineering, better durability, better battery behavior, and most importantly, software that makes the fold feel natural instead of gimmicky. If Apple wants foldables to feel inevitable, iOS has to be ready. That's why iOS 27 could matter even more than usual. If there's a foldable iPhone coming, WWDC is where Apple can quietly lay the groundwork. Adaptive UI behavior, improved multitasking, better continuity between screen states, smarter app layouts, and developer tools that make apps look perfect on a folding display. But the real drama is this. Does Tim Cook want the first official look at Apple's foldable iPhone to happen on his watch? If Cook is nearing the end of his tenure, this would be a historic one more thing type of moment. An opportunity to attach his legacy not just to Apple's success, but to Apple's next iconic iPhone form factor. On the other hand, Cook has never been known for chasing credit. One of the defining traits of his leadership has been how little ego he projects compared to the Steve Jobs era. That means Cook could be perfectly comfortable letting John Ternus eventually own the foldable iPhone launch as the next CEO. And there's another angle too. If the foldable iPhone has any flaws, or the market reception is mixed, maybe Cook would prefer not to anchor his finale to a risky new category. So will Apple tease it? If Apple does, expect it to be carefully controlled, no pricing, no launch date, no long spec list. Just enough to confirm it's real, clarify the name, and make sure Apple owns the narrative. Now let's talk about what almost everyone expects to be the centerpiece of WWDC 2026. AI Siri. Siri has become one of Apple's biggest pressure points. Consumers look at ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and other modern AI assistants and wonder why Siri still struggles with basic context, complex tasks, and natural conversation. The gap feels bigger every year, and WWDC 2026 feels like Apple's moment to finally close it. The rumors suggest Apple is preparing a dramatically upgraded Siri experience, potentially powered by a Gemini-level partnership or similar capability, along with a new Siri app and a broader AI agent direction. That phrase matters. An AI agent isn't just a chatbot that answers questions. It's something that can actually do things for you, take actions across apps, follow multi-step instructions, understand what you're trying to accomplish, and complete tasks without you babysitting every step. If Apple is serious, this Siri won't just be smarter in conversation, it will be more useful in real life. That could include deep integration with the camera app and what some leaks describe as visual intelligence, where Siri helps you edit photos, understand what you're seeing, or generate useful actions from on-screen content. And Apple will almost certainly push its favorite differentiator, privacy. Expect Apple to emphasize that its AI experience is built to be more private than rivals. Think on-device processing where possible, secure handling of requests, reduced tracking, and possibly features like auto-deleting chat logs or minimizing stored history. Apple's brand can't afford an AI strategy that feels like surveillance. So privacy isn't just a feature, it's Apple's positioning. There's also another rumor that could be a big deal: choice. Reports suggest Apple may allow users to choose third-party AI tools as part of the Apple Intelligence ecosystem. If that's true, Apple could become the interface layer for AI, giving users flexibility while Apple controls the security, permissions, and experience. That's a very Apple way to compete. Not necessarily building the loudest model, but owning the platform and the trust. But Apple has a problem going into this keynote, and it's not technical, it's credibility. Apple has been criticized for hype around AI features that weren't ready when first promoted. That creates a boy who cried wolf situation. Even if the upgraded Siri is genuinely impressive, viewers might still watch the demos with skepticism. So Apple's biggest challenge at WWDC 2026 is simple: prove it. And the strongest way to prove it would also be the boldest: a live demo. Real-time Siri, real tasks, real results. No cutting, no cinematic editing, no coming later this year disclaimers doing all the heavy lifting. But Apple has leaned heavily into pre-recorded keynotes since 2020, and it hasn't done live demos in the same way it once did. That makes a live AI Siri demo unlikely, but it would be the single most confidence-building move Apple could make. If Apple avoids live demos, then the next best strategy is ultra-specific demonstrations that feel impossible to fake. Multi-step actions, deep app control, follow-up questions that maintain context, and practical scenarios people actually care about: writing, scheduling, summarizing, searching across device content, and acting on results. Now here's a twist that could quietly become one of the biggest WWDC 2026 announcements: web-based Apple Intelligence experience. Apple typically doesn't lead with web apps, but Apple already offers critical services through iCloud.com, and that ecosystem has saved users who lose their phones or need access from a non-Apple device. There are reports Apple may have prepared a domain like gna.apple.com, not yet active publicly, but potentially reserved for exactly this purpose. A dedicated Apple Intelligence website would make a lot of sense in 2026. AI is not just a phone feature. People use AI on laptops, at work, in browsers, and on shared devices. If Apple wants Apple Intelligence to be a real platform, putting it on the web is a logical move. especially if it's tied to Apple ID, privacy controls, and secure access. Imagine Apple launching a clean, secure portal where you can use Siri-style AI features in a browser, access writing tools, summarization tools, productivity helpers, and possibly even switch between Apple's AI and approved third-party models. That would instantly expand Apple Intelligence beyond iPhone and iPad. And it would also tell developers something important. Apple wants AI to be an ecosystem, not a single feature. And if Apple includes access to something, like ChatGPT through a privacy-focused interface, potentially reducing ads compared to other platforms, that would be a major draw for users who want powerful AI without feeling monetized. All of this ties back to iOS 27, which may be the most important iOS update in years, not only because of AI, but because of what happened with iOS 26. iOS 26 was controversial. Some reports about low adoption may have been exaggerated, but the user discomfort was real. Many people complained about performance issues and called it bloatware, especially when core experiences like the keyboard felt slower or less responsive. When users feel friction in everyday interactions, typing, switching apps, searching, using the camera, that's when an iOS update becomes a reputation problem. Then there's design. The liquid glass aesthetic divided users hard. Some liked the glossy look. Others felt it made icons look cheap, cluttered, and less readable, like gel stickers instead of premium design. And reports that a design leader behind liquid glass departed only fuel the idea that Apple itself may be rethinking that direction internally. So the iOS 27 question is bigger than what's new. The question is, will Apple course correct? Will iOS 27 be lighter, faster, and more polished? Will Apple spend the year removing bloat and optimizing the parts users touch most? Will Apple refine the visual language into something cleaner and more timeless? And if the WWDC 2026 branding and glowing visuals hint at a Siri redesign hiding in plain sight, could that be Apple signaling a more modern, more coherent UI direction? And of course, the question iPhone owners always dread, will iOS 27 drop support for older devices like the iPhone 11? It's possible. Apple often frames these decisions around performance and enabling new features. But for users, it's immediate, whether their phone stays current, whether they keep getting security updates, and whether they're being pushed toward an upgrade. When you zoom out, WWDC 2026 looks like Apple trying to prove multiple things at once. Apple needs to prove that Apple Intelligence is real, useful, and not just marketing. Apple needs to prove Siri can finally compete in a world where AI assistants are becoming the main interface for everyday computing. Apple needs to prove iOS can evolve without feeling heavier, slower, or visually over-designed. Apple may also want to prove that it still knows how to create next iPhone excitement, even if it arrives late to a category like foldables. And then there's the quiet but massive undercurrent. Apple needs to show stability during a potential leadership transition, because leaks can tell you what Apple might announce. They can't tell you the tone of the company. They can't tell you how confident the demos feel. They can't tell you whether this keynote is a celebration, a correction, a pivot, or a passing of the torch. So when the WWDC 2026 keynote begins, watch what Apple emphasizes, watch who takes center stage, and watch what Apple chooses to demonstrate versus what it chooses to promise. If we get a foldable iPhone tease, it's Apple resetting the iPhone story. If we get a genuinely powerful AI Siri, it's Apple resetting the Assistant story. If we get a web-based Apple Intelligence portal, it's Apple resetting the platform story. And if we see Tim Cook and John Turnus presented in a way that feels like a transition, then WWDC 2026 won't just be a developer conference keynote, it'll be the beginning of Apple's next era.